On a sweltering July day in 1907, a single woman walked into a kitchen and unknowingly unleashed a silent killer upon an entire city, setting in motion a saga that would forever alter the landscape of public health and civil liberties. Mary Mallon, later infamously dubbed Typhoid Mary, was an Irish immigrant who arrived in New York with nothing but a suitcase, a fierce work ethic, and a hidden bacterial empire thriving within her gut. Born in County Cork in 1869, Mary left a life of poverty and hardship behind, boarding a ship bound for America at the tender age of 16. She found work as a domestic servant, a role that quickly led her to the bustling world of New York's private kitchens. By the early 1900s, she had become a highly sought-after cook, praised for her efficiency, punctuality, and the ability to keep a household running like clockwork. Yet beneath this veneer of competence lay an invisible threat, an asymptomatic carriage of Salmonella typhi, the bacterium that causes typhoid fever. Typhoid fever, a devastating disease marked by high fever, abdominal pain, and a characteristic rose spot rash, claimed thousands of lives each year in the crowded, unsanitary neighborhoods of early 20th century America. The disease spreads through contaminated food and water, making kitchen workers a critical vector. In 1906, a string of typhoid cases erupted in the affluent household of a wealthy Bronx family, the Browns, who had hired Mary as their cook. Within weeks, 7 family members fell ill and 3 perished. The local health department, still grappling with the relatively new concept of asymptomatic carriers, could not explain the sudden surge. Enter George W. Hunter, a diligent sanitary engineer with the New York City Health Department, who began a meticulous investigation. He traced the outbreak to a single source, the food prepared by Mary Mallon. By testing the stools of kitchen staff, Hunter discovered that Mary was shedding massive quantities of the typhoid bacillus, despite never having suffered a fever herself. He confronted her with the evidence, insisting that she was the source of infection, but Mary, confident in her own health, rejected the claim outright. "I've never been sick a day in my life," she declared, "so I cannot be the cause." Her denial set the stage for a clash between scientific authority and personal liberty that would echo through the century. In November 1907, New York City officials, armed with a court order, detained Mary in the newly built Riverside Hospital on North Brother Island, a remote, marshy outpost reserved for the most dangerous infectious patients. The hospital's isolation ward was a stark, windowless cell, designed to contain the most virulent diseases. Here, Mary faced a choice: undergo a radical surgical procedure that involved removing her gallbladder and parts of her intestines to eradicate the bacteria, or remain in perpetual quarantine. The operation, still experimental at the time, carried a high risk of death and, crucially, would render her unable to work as a cook, a prospect that terrified the fiercely independent woman. Mary refused the surgery, insisting that she was not ill and that she had a right to earn a living. The authorities, convinced that public safety outweighed individual rights, kept her confined. For 3 long years, she endured the isolation of Brother Island, a solitary figure in a sterile cell, while the city's newspapers sensationalized her story, dubbing her the most dangerous woman in America. In 1910, the health board, believing they had exhausted all options, released her under the condition that she never again work as a cook. Freedom, however, came with a price. Mary, unable to find alternative employment, reverted to cooking under an assumed name, Martha Miller, and was hired by a respectable family in Oyster Bay. Within weeks, the family's youngest son fell gravely ill, and within a month, the same pattern of fever, delirium, and death unfolded. When investigators traced the outbreak back to her kitchen, a new court order was issued, and Mary was taken back to Brother Island, this time for life. The trial of Mary Mallon was not a courtroom drama but a series of public health hearings that raised unsettling questions about the balance between individual freedoms and community protection. The city's legal counsel argued that Mary's refusal to cooperate made her a public menace, while civil libertarians decried the indefinite detention without a formal criminal charge as a dangerous precedent. The case illuminated a gap in the law. There was no legal framework for imprisoning a healthy individual solely because they carried a pathogen. Mary spent the next 27 years on Brother Island, her health gradually deteriorating under the weight of isolation. She kept a diary, recording her yearning for freedom and her belief that she had been wrongfully punished. In 1938, at the age of 69, Mary succumbed to pneumonia, a common ailment in the damp, cold corridors of the island's infirmary. She died a solitary figure, still clinging to the conviction that she had been unjustly treated. No autopsy was performed. The city's health officials, perhaps out of respect for her privacy or simply due to bureaucratic oversight, never examined her body after death. Consequently, the ultimate biological proof of her carrier status rests on the historic stool cultures taken decades earlier, leaving a lingering mystery that continues to intrigue medical historians. The legacy of Typhoid Mary ripples through modern public health policy. Subscribe to the Autopsy Files for more stories like this.